Good afternoon, good morning from wherever you are dialing in from around the world. We welcome you to the Blacks in Government Call T. Rowan Women's History Celebration Program. And we're so delighted to share this space with the following organizations: the Executive Women at State and Affinity Group here, and also the Office of Civil Rights. We're so excited that you have taken your time to be with us to hear a wonderful presentation on leading change from the Honorable Shirley Jones. To tell you more about our purpose and also to welcome you, I invite to the space our friend and Vice President of the Executive Women at State, Ruth Murphy.
Thank you, Madam President. Welcome everyone, echoing Sherry's welcome. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're hailing from. Executive Women at State is indeed honored and pleased to be a part of this presentation today on Leading Change with the Honorable Madam President Shirley Jones of Blacks in Government National Chapter. So just to tell you a little bit about Blacks in Government, as Sherry mentioned, I am the Vice President, Civil Service Vice President for Executive Women at State. And EWS, as we're well known, is one of the department's 17 employee affinity groups. And we have just over 2,000 members. Our primary goal is to achieve gender parity at all levels in the department, including senior leadership positions. To this end, we advocate, we mentor, and we work to develop future generation of female leaders within the department. With our colleagues, including Blacks in Government and our other EAG community, we promote diversity, equity, and inclusion for all. Welcome again. Thank you, Madam President, and I will turn it back over to you. Enjoy this program today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. We're so excited to be one of the 17 affinity groups here at the agency. In Blacks in Government, the Call T. Rowan Chapter has a long history of service advocacy, professional development, and youth connection here at the agency. Not only will we celebrate our 20th year in its existence, but we also have kicked off an inaugural program for the emerging leaders. And I'm proud to introduce one of the 10 emerging leaders of the Cole T. Rowan Emerging Leaders Program. Her name is Nikki Wallace. She is a program manager for telework at the Department of Labor. She attended the real HU, Howard University, and graduated magna cum laude from Catholic University. She holds a BA in Business Management and a master's degree in Human Resources Management. Nikki is so talented. She's a Girl Scout troop leader. She is a co-creator of a mentoring program called STAND Foundation. That means strengthening thoughts and nurturing dreams here in Washington, D.C. She is a proud new member of the Federal City Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And as I mentioned earlier, one of our shining stars of the Call T. Rowan Emerging Leaders Program. I introduce to you, State Department, Miss Nikki Wallace.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us and welcome. I have the pleasure and the honor to introduce the Honorable Shirley A. Jones, Esquire. Shirley Jones is a senior executive member at the U.S. Government Accountability Office as the first African-American female in the agency's history to be appointed to the position of Managing Associate General Counsel within GAO's Office of General Counsel. She has management and leadership responsibility for 3 of the office's legal teams focused on budget and appropriations law and congressional oversight. Ms. Jones is also a certified leadership and diversity and inclusion trainer on GAO's adjunct faculty. For over 20 years, she has also taught accounting and law classes part-time at the law school and undergraduate level. Within the National Organization of Blacks in Government, Ms. Jones assumed the position of Blacks in Government National President on January 1st, 2021, after having served as the National Executive Vice President for over 3 years. Believing strongly in BIG's mission of advocating for equal employment opportunity and a level playing field, Ms. Jones considers herself both an employee advocate and a career development trainer. In her advocacy role, not once, but twice, she has had the opportunity to present before Congress to share on and rebuilding BIG's equal employment opportunity information. She also worked on rebuilding BIG's equal employment opportunity in the Institute in 2009 and developed recommendations and wrote the first EEO advocacy paper sent to Congress from BIG since the mid-1990s. In addition to her radio and television appearances, Ms. Jones previously co-hosted the Big Experience radio show on Radio 1. She frequently speaks in the DC area, addressing a variety of topics related to leadership and empowerment. She has also written op-ed pieces in the Historic Afro newspaper and the HBCU Connect and other publications. She is currently a featured contributor for the GovLoop. Ms. Jones graduated magna cum laude from Spelman College with a political science degree. She also received her JD and her Master's of Law and Taxation degrees from Georgetown University. Without further ado, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome the Honorable Shirley S. Jones, Esquire, to be with us this afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that very gracious introduction. As you all can likely tell, I like to talk. So let me start by saying that I was so very honored to be asked to serve as your 2021 Women's History Month speaker. In fact, when John, Mr. Jasek, reached out with the invitation, I knew that I would move everything necessary on my calendar to be with you here today because of his commitment. I want to say that I appreciate John and I appreciate this invitation from the Carl T. Rowan Blacks in Government chapter. So as your 2021 Women's History Month speaker, if you will indulge me, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my career path to the senior and executive service. And as I do so, I will actually weave in 3 topics. I'll definitely talk about leading change because that was a very important part of my path to the SES, but I'll also talk to you a little bit about resilience because that's also a very important part of leading change and has also been pivotal to my success. And lastly, I'll talk to you a little bit about time management. And I'm going to be watching the clock so that I can manage the time that I have with you to present and to leave some time for Q&A. So first, I have spent my entire career at the U.S. Government Accountability Office, almost 33 years now. Coming up in May will be 33 years for me. And I have been living out my childhood dream of becoming a lawyer. And it was a dream that grew into becoming a lawyer that would help government be accountable to and representative of the people that it serves. And I believe that we are doing exactly that at the U.S. Government Accountability Office, supporting the Congress and the American people that we report to. In fact, I believe we are all doing just that. Your agency's mission might be different from mine, but ultimately we are all working for the American people, our fellow neighbors, and our family members. So I am indeed very proud that, as was noted in my introduction, that in February of 2019, I was appointed by the United States Comptroller General, who now sometimes refers to me as Madam President. I was appointed to the Senior Executive Service, and as the first and only African-American female in the agency's 100-year history. Yes, let me repeat that. GAO turned 100 years this year, and I am the first and the only African-American female in the agency's history to be appointed to the position of managing associate general counsel. And that's what's noted in the introduction. In that position, I manage 3 of our legal teams that focus on decision writing, centered around appropriations law, budget matters, and other congressional oversight. With you all being in the State Department, I have no doubt that you have read some of the decisions that my teams have issued. So I started my career as a GS7 summer legal associate while I was still in law school at Georgetown University. In fact, the law school and GAO are just a couple of blocks apart. And so I used to make that little walk down H Street during the summer and during the school year to learn more about GAO and to learn more about this agency that was created to hold the entire government accountable. And I fell in love with GAO, and upon graduating from law school, I stayed on board to continue my dream of helping government be accountable. So I have dedicated my entire legal career to GAO. And having done that, of course, being a first in the agency's history definitely felt like a big deal to me. But interestingly and happily, I quickly learned that it's also a big deal to other people. And I know it's a big deal because I'm often asked to speak on the topic of my path to the SES. And in conjunction, I'm also always asked to talk about the topic of resilience. You know, I guess people assume you must be pretty resilient if you are the first in history to do something. Now, I remember the first time I was asked to speak on the topic of resilience, and I started thinking about what would I talk about, because I didn't necessarily see myself as the face of resilience. And so I started envisioning, who do I see as the face of resilience and strength? And if you'll indulge me, I'll share some of the people that I see when I think about that topic. You know, I think about Claudette Colvin. She's 81 years old now, but she was a teenage civil rights activist who was simply too tired to give up her seat on the bus on the way home from school. So on March 2nd, 1955, Claudette Colvin refused to move for a white passenger. And that was 9 months before Rosa Parks did the same, both in the same city. They were both in Montgomery, Alabama, and they were also both NAACP members. Claudette, of course, was a teenager, so she was in the junior arm of the NAACP. But she later said that she was inspired not to give up her seat by 2 earlier pioneers who she felt were encouraging her to stand, or in this case, sit her ground. As she told Newsweek, I felt like Sojourner Truth was pushing down on one shoulder and Harriet Tubman was pushing down on the other shoulder. And they were both saying, sit down, girl. And like Parks, the 15-year-old Colvin was arrested for violating Montgomery, Alabama's segregation laws. Interestingly, she received death threats. As a teenager, she received death threats for standing up for what was right. But through her resilience, even though she was not selected to stand alongside Ms. Parks to challenge those segregation laws in the South, she later did become one of the 4 plaintiffs in the Supreme Court case that ruled that Montgomery's segregated bus system was unconstitutional. So indeed, Claudette Colvin is the face of resilience. I also see in the face of resilience, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Ray Rivera. They were LGBTQ activists who dared to be themselves. They were prominent activists in New York City in the 1960s, and they were instrumental in the growing gay rights movement. Both, in fact, were part of the resistance with police during the 1969 Stonewall riots, which sparked the national gay rights movement. Yes, they are the face of resilience. When I think of resilience, I definitely think of Lucy Macbeth. She is currently serving as the U.S. representative in the Congress for Georgia's 6th congressional district. And I know you may not know Miss Macbeth's name right off, but you know her story because in 2012, Congresswoman Macbeth's 17-year-old son, Jordan Davis, was shot and killed following an argument in a gas station in Florida over something as simple as loud music. The shooting and its aftermath received national attention and prompted discussion about those controversial self-defense laws commonly known as stand your ground. But Macbeth, she is the face of resilience for me because she took the grief of losing her son all the way to the Congress. She left her 30-year-long career working for Delta Airlines to become a gun control advocate. She first became the national spokeswoman for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. She then took her resiliency and her advocacy all the way to defeating a challenger to become the representative for Georgia's 6th congressional district, where she still currently serves. Yes, for me, she is the face of resilience. And last but not least, and there's so many other people I could have chosen, last but not least, I chose to talk to you about Patsy Meech, a third-generation Japanese American who in 1964 became the first Asian American woman and the first woman from any ethnic minority group to be elected to Congress. In her 4 decades in the Congress, through resilience, she championed the rights of immigrants, women, and children. Of course, while I did not see my face as the face of resilience, like I see those women, my path is not theirs, and your path won't be mine, but we are all the face of resilience. We know that resilience comes in all shapes and sizes, and all of our stories are important. And so I can tell you that my path to the senior executive service was by far not without struggle. There were twists and turns, ups and downs, and frustrations, to say the least. You know, I remember less than a year before I received the appointment to the senior executive service, I remember being so frustrated, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit later when I get to leading change. But I was so very frustrated that I called one of my mentors and I told him that I was positive that my path to the SES had been washed out. But I am so very proud that my resilience and my commitment to serve others has brought me to this day. Importantly, I like to share my story because I know there are some of you with similar aspirations and with similar frustrations. And so I tell you, and if you don't remember anything else about me, I want you to remember 2 things. First, I am an example of preparation meeting opportunity. But secondly, and perhaps more importantly, I am an example that our agencies are making greater strides towards greater diversity, equity, and inclusion, and recognizing that excellence is both colorblind and gender neutral. So in the words of Vice President Kamala Harris, I am the first, but I won't be the last. Now that's my story of resilience. Let me talk to you about leading change, because I'm also quite often asked to talk on that topic as well. And it is a topic that is very important to me. But before I get to how it relates to me personally, what better time than now to discuss leading change? With this new administration, and in fact, with any new administration, many of you will be called upon personally to lead change in your current positions, or you might interview for new positions in which you will be leading change. Now, of course, leading change is one of the executive core qualifications, we call them ECQs, for the senior executive service that was identified by the Office of Personnel Management to be addressed when you apply for an SES position. But also, even if you're not about to apply for an SES position, there's a common interview question that also relates to leading change. And generally, it'll come in different forms, but quite often the question will be, tell me about one successful change effort you led. You know, and the funny thing is, when I was preparing for my SES interview for this position, you know, I did a lot of research about the different questions, and that question kept popping up. Two questions popped up a lot, and that was one, and the other one was, what is your leadership style? And so I prepped a lot on those two questions. And my very first question in the interview had 3 parts to it. It was a 3-part question, and it intertwined leadership with being a change agent. So I exhort you, if you're about to apply for a leadership position, really focus on how you think you are a change agent. But why? Let's think about it for a second. Why is leading change so important? You know, put simply, it is so important because our government's systems and processes need to evolve with the changing needs and the changing times. And so we need to be change agents in order to do that. But it also begs the question of why leading change is so difficult. Now, why is it so difficult? It is so difficult because it is quite often met with resistance. But why are people so resistant to change? It is simple. It is, you don't have to be a psychologist to know that people are resistant to change because they fear it. They fear what they will lose. They fear losing control over the process. They fear losing control over their time. And quite often they fear losing power and status. So whenever you are in charge of a change effort, you have to make sure you are balancing the change effort with the concerns of the people you are called upon to lead. So let me talk a little bit about my own effort to lead change within GAO, because I can tell you that while I had been called upon to lead change before, right before I applied for this position, I was called upon to lead change in a manner in which I totally opposed. And that was that same time frame when I called my mentor and I told him that I thought my path to the SES had been blocked. And the reason I thought that it had been blocked is because right about 7 months before the appointment, the general counsel called me into his office and he told me that he was reorganizing the office of general counsel and that he was going to move my function to another part of the office. And within that move, I was given 2 options. I was given the option to go with my team and stand up the team over there under a new senior executive service member, or I could stay with this senior executive service member that I was with and stand up a new team there. And I can tell you that neither option appealed to me. And the reason that neither option appealed to me is because both options looked as if my future path to the SES would be blocked. I'm going to be frank with you. I looked at the new position that I would be asked to stand up as a dead end position. I looked at the work that I was already doing as a wonderful portfolio, a wonderful body of work that was very meaningful, but it was being moved over to a senior executive service member who was newly promoted and who was in her 40s. So clearly I thought, wow, both of these options are blocking my path to the SES. But I can tell you, I chose to go with the work that I had groomed for all those years and to be under the leadership of a new senior executive service member. And in so doing, everyone knew, just based on the fact that I wanted to be in the SES and I was going to be serving under an SESer who was newly promoted and younger than me, that was not an ideal path. But what it showed was my commitment to the office. It showed my resilience. It showed my dedication to the mission of the agency, even in a situation that looked like it would not benefit me personally. I can tell you that while I thought it was career limiting, it was career advancing, because no more than 2 months under her leadership, if that long, she came to me and said, "Shirley, I hope you don't mind. I told the general counsel how gracious you have been, how you have submitted to my leadership, how you have shared more information than I ever needed to be able to lead this function." And, and I thanked her for that reference, but I wondered, why is she being so emotional in such a short period of time? But she went on to tell me, "Shirley, not only am I about to leave this position, I am recommending that you apply for this position." Now, had I resisted, had I been that resistant that I talked about at the front end of this leading change discussion, then I would have limited my own career opportunities. So I leave you with this point on leading change. Never underestimate its importance, and don't be the one resistant to it. My philosophy on leading change is change happens, so you might as well lead it. So lastly, I'm often asked to speak on the topic of time management. In fact, I am often asked the question, how do I do it all? Well, the short answer is I don't do it all. No one does it all. But I often, when I'm asked that question, will say, we make time for what's important to us. And the reason that so many people ask me that question is because they have some knowledge of my responsibilities. And we've already discussed here today my responsibilities as a senior executive service member at GAO, but I am simultaneously serving as the 15th national president of the Blacks in Government organization, which has members in over 150 chapters within federal agencies all across the country. And as national president, I like to refer to myself as the CEO, but not chief executive officer, chief empowerment officer. And let me say that again, not the chief executive officer, the chief empowerment officer. And as such, I have leadership and management responsibilities over Blacks in Government's national efforts, and also providing support and guidance for our regions and our chapters. So it does at times feel like I have a full-time job. So, or 2 full-time jobs, not a full-time job, 2 full-time jobs, my SES position and my position as national president of BIG. So time management is very important for my career, and I exhort you to make it a priority for yours as well. And so I'd like to just leave you with a few quick tips on time management. First, use your calendars effectively. I put everything on my calendar. Even now, of course, there are people who have to have some visibility to my calendar. Anyone who's looking at my calendar right now knows that I'm speaking to the State Department on Women's History Month on behalf of the Carl T. Rowan Big Chapter. And I put all of that on my calendar because I want people to know what's important to me. Blacks in government is important enough for me to block off the time on my calendar and make it clear to anyone looking at my calendar, this is what Shirley is doing right here and right now. And I encourage you, if it's important to you, if it's something that needs to be done, I even have my calendar down to 15-minute increments. Everything that I need to do is on my calendar. The next thing I would exhort you to do, set goals for meetings and real goals, not just, I blocked off the calendar for a meeting from 1 to 2 p.m., but I have goals for the meeting, whether I'm leading the meeting or I'm a participant in the meeting. I have goals, whether I am sitting in the meeting to listen and to learn, or I'm in the meeting to share and to motivate. I have a clear goal. And if I am leading that meeting, I have a clear goal as to the start of the meeting, the agenda for the meeting, the action items I want resolved in the meeting, and a clear end time. The next time management tip I would share with you is to delegate intentionally. Quite often we think of delegating as simply a time management tool, but it's also a leadership tool. Not only does it allow you to free up time on your calendars, but it also allows you to delegate others so that they too can learn and grow. Now, quite often we're resistant to delegation because we think we lose control. I see that a lot, even in Blacks in government. We think we lose control over our processes, but you make it a learning opportunity for someone else, but you still maintain your oversight and you clarify in the delegation order what the tasks are and what your oversight responsibilities are. So don't be afraid to use delegation as both a time management and a leadership tool. The next thing you want to do is to make sure you prioritize wisely. Now, most of us make these to-do lists and they're just long lists with no priorities. I encourage you to actually prioritize. My list have two parts to it. The top part has those items that I can whip off in a second and get them off my plate. They're not going to be buried down in the list with everything else because they're action items that can quickly get out of the way. And then the next part of the list are those longer action items that need a little bit more attention. And for those, I prioritize them in order of importance. The next thing I would encourage you to do is to block out all distractions. This is very important now that so many of us are working remotely from home. And believe me, I know my situation is not yours. Your situation is not mine. There's so many people, including on my staff, that are really struggling to homeschool their children and to take care of loved ones that may be ill. And so I'm definitely not calling anyone's children or loved ones distractions. I'm talking about things like the TV in the background and other things that we didn't do at work, so we likely shouldn't do at home because they're going to be distractions. And the same thing with multitasking. We can multitask so much easier because we're now at home, right? But if you're constantly asking someone to repeat themselves, you're not managing your time well, and you're not managing their time as well either. So block out distractions. The last thing that I will leave you with on time management is remember to take time to simply breathe. It is so hard to enjoy this journey if you're out of breath. Now, I'm not going to prolong the hour much longer. I've been watching the time, and I know we want to get to some Q&As, but I would be remiss if I didn't give some closing remarks. And so I want to start my closing by saying that I am so very proud to be leading an organization that has as one of its goals and objectives to create programs that enhance ethnic pride and educational opportunities, just like this session that we're doing here today. But since our organization's foundation is indeed advocacy, and this is indeed Women's History Month, I would also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that we still have work to do. Despite progress in gender equality, according to OPM's latest federal employment data, the federal senior executive service is still largely male at 66.2% and white at 78.8%. As such, there is very limited diversity in decision-making at the highest levels in the federal government. And that's such a very important fact. We know that the most important decisions are made sitting around that table at the highest level with the senior executive service members. And so we need greater diversity in decision-making, and so that we can address those issues surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, while the overall federal employment has women at 43.44%, minority women are still underrepresented in those numbers. Yes, our agencies happily and readily report that there have been increases in women and minority representation in hiring, and they should be proud of that. But a closer look at the demographic data from OPM shows disturbing gaps. For example, for African American employment, that representation is still largely relegated to lower graded administrative, clerical, and blue collar positions. Now, of course, some agencies are doing better than others, but the overall demographic data for the federal government still shows disturbing gaps. The data shows that much work still needs to be done to address systemic barriers to recruitment, promotion, retention, training, and definitely those other developmental opportunities that are often assigned subjectively, like details and rotational assignments that we all know lead to advancement. Importantly, once women, especially African American women, do make it into leadership positions, we still as women face microaggressions and stereotypes in the workplace. If we display the same characteristics that our male counterparts display, we are labeled too competitive, difficult to work with, and even bullies. And we know once a woman is labeled a bully, that is a difficult label to shake, even when her actions are lesser than her male counterparts. It is just simply a perception that's difficult to shake. I personally believe that society still does not see women as leaders in the same manner as they see the 6'2" white male. When I read articles about the benefits of gender diversity and having more women in the workplace, I see references to greater employee engagement, increased workplace flexibilities, and enhanced collaboration. Those are all quotes from my notes from articles that I've read during Women's History Month about the benefits of having more women in the workplace. Now, those are all great things, but women want to be credited for the same leadership skills that men have. So yes, as we celebrate Women's History Month, we must recognize that there's still work to be done. The good thing is, I see the faces around this room, and even the faces I don't see. I've been seeing the comments flying across the chat box. I know we are ready for this challenge. So I close by saying thank you to John Jasek for this wonderful invitation. Thank you for the call to Rowan Chapter for being so gracious. And thank you to all of you for being an outstanding audience for me here today. God bless you all.
Madam President, thank you so much for that riveting, inspiring, moving presentation. Like you said, you've seen the chat, and we have a ton of questions that I'm going to get started with right away. But I just want to say I am indeed honored to be here. This presentation needs to be, you just need to be heard far and wide. And I really thank you for stepping up and accepting this request to do a presentation to the State Department. We absolutely need to hear it. We are lacking in the senior ranks, not only SES levels, GS-14s, GS-15s, and I agree we're ready for change. And we can lead the change. It's going to happen, and we might as well do it. So I love those nuggets, and we are going to promote this recording for folks who are not able to join today, because it's amazing, and I thank you for it. So I will get started with the questions without further ado, and I apologize if we don't get to all of these, but thank you all for sending them in. And so the first question is, as the new national president of Blacks in Government, what do you hope to achieve under your leadership?
Thank you so much for that question. You know, it's really a simple answer. My goal is to make big truly big. We are a volunteer organization, and we need more members to really move forward this big mission. You know, I don't know if you all have had a chance to see it, but I actually received an email just last night from a State Department member, Carrie Neal, who congratulated me on an article that he saw in Fed Manager that came out last night. And the title of the article is Big is Getting Back to the Basics. And it starts by sharing that I want everyone to know that Blacks in Government still stands for advocacy. You know, the first thing I did on day one of my administration was to send a letter to then President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, of course, congratulating them on their historic victory, but encouraging them to honor the commitment to, on day one, rescind those executive orders related to blocking diversity and inclusion training and creating the new Schedule F that would have made a lot of federal employees basically sitting ducks and targets for firing. And of course, I knew that the president fully intended to honor his word, but the importance of sending that letter was to let him know Blacks in Government intends to sit at the table with you and to support you in advancing your initiatives related to racial equity. And so what I have personally been doing is a lot of interviews. I've been interviewed by Joe Davison with the Washington Post, interviewed by Ms. Bublé with Government Exec. And I'm trying to really get the word out that Blacks in Government stands for advocacy. We have examined the data from OPM, and we know there's work to be done, and we intend to be a part of the solution, partnering with our agencies. And so what I want to do as national president is create greater visibility, greater positive talk about Blacks in Government, so that all African Americans will want to be a part of this change effort to make government be the model employer that it says it wants to be. We need all hands on deck to be able to do that. And I stand ready to work with everyone to move forward this long-standing big mission. Thank you for that question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I can say that in addition to President Biden standing behind his words, Secretary Blinken has met separately with Blacks in Government, with Thursday Luncheon Group, because he wants to hear our voice. And I know Sherry and others are very vocal and not afraid of speaking out. So we have to hold leadership accountable. Thank you so much for that. So the next question is, what two things do you suggest women focus on this year based on your experience during the last year of the pandemic? Any professional development or personal development that you would recommend, in addition to what you've shared about distractions and those different points?
Well, I definitely believe very strongly in continuous learning. And most of us now are working from home. And if you have the time to really commit to taking additional training, I exhort you to do that. So I would put that at the top of the list for women and men, to make sure your resume punches above its weight class. Make sure you're looking as if you're ready for that next level. Just last month, I graduated from American University's Key Executive Leadership Program, and it was an optional program. I didn't have to take the program because I've been a senior executive for a couple of years now, but I took the program because I think there's something for all of us to learn at every stage of our careers. So I definitely would suggest that everyone put at the top of their list continuous learning and invest in training, and ask your agency to continue to invest in you, because these programs are open to everyone. Even the Partnership for Public Service, they invited me last week to speak to their cohort of students in their leadership program. So there are so many leadership programs out there that will help you have what you need on your resume when you're saying you're ready for the next level. I definitely would be remiss if I didn't say Blacks in Government has a leadership program. We have our Darling Young Leadership Academy, named after a State Department employee, the Honorable Darlene Young, who's one of our past presidents and past board chairs. So under her leadership, we established our own leadership program, and it is hosted in conjunction with Morgan State University. So I exhort you, as a big member, invest in yourself. Apply to the Darling Young Leadership Academy. Ask your agency to enroll you in the Partnership for Public Services program. So really look into those programs. The other thing that I would say to women in particular, because this is something that I always prided myself on being, but then I kind of fell off a little bit. And what I'm referring to is I always prided myself on being myself and being genuine and being authentic. I always prided myself on doing all of those things. But then, when it was time for me to apply for the SES position, and my first few months as an SESer, one of my girlfriends told me, she said, this is the SES Shirley. And I laughed when she said that, because she was right. I had changed my hair, before applying for the SES. For years, I had a shaved right side and a asymmetrical haircut on the left side. And, I went to some blonde hair and a different hairstyle, and I started dressing differently because I wanted to fit in. Who doesn't want to fit in? But I'm here to tell you, you need to be your authentic self, because that's the only thing you can easily be anyway. And I can tell you, when I tried to be something other than Shirley, when I tried to not be as aggressive as I normally am, when I tried to tone down a few things to make others comfortable, I got lost in, I don't want to say lost in the shuffle, but I was losing. And we want to really come to the table as our authentic selves from the start, so everyone knows what we stand for and everyone knows who we are. So I'm back. I'm back to the swoop on the left and braided side. And I feel good about who I am. And so as women, we should feel good about who we are. So that would be my second piece of advice. Be authentic to yourself.
Thank you for that. And your authentic self is amazing. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you.
So a quick question about the elephant in the room. Often people of color, in addition to having to cover, we have different goalposts. And so I recently heard, actually in a Partnership for Public Service program, an SES who rose to the rank of an SES and said she'd never supervised before she got to that role. And that was interesting to me because I thought that it was unheard of. And so as a woman of color, what advice do you have for rising federal employees who are coming up through the ranks? And are there different rules that we should be aware of? I heard you talk a little bit about not being authentic, but are there other rules for us?
Well, and let me say this. I definitely, I would be lying to you all if I said that there weren't some unwritten rules, and there are rules that we don't know about. And that's why they call it unwritten rules. But there are also different standards, so to speak, and until our agencies really, truly follow what I said in my remarks, that excellence is both colorblind and gender neutral, there will always be these different standards because there's so much unconscious bias that really gets in the way of a level playing field. And that's why, women of color, and even I found myself thinking, it's my hair, a distraction to other people, it's the way that I dress or the way that I present myself, it's a distraction to other people. We shouldn't have to think about those things because others don't. But the realization is we simply do have to think about it. But in the final analysis, I go back to what I said, we still have to come in as our authentic selves because we do have to be true to ourselves. And we have to keep exposing these biases. We have to keep pushing for a level playing field. And we have to, of course, keep pushing our own selves towards excellence. One of the things that I always say, that you're not going to get to the table if you haven't first dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's to make sure that you're ready for that next level. You have to done that. You have to have done that before you can say that it's unconscious bias that's keeping you from the table. But the long and short of it is we still have a lot of work to do. The data shows there's still a lot of work to do. And, there's still unconscious bias and those unwritten rules that get others to a level quicker than we get to the level. I'll be honest with you, I'm the first African-American female in the agency's history, but I thought it was going to happen a long time ago. I honestly did. But I didn't give up on it. That's why I like talking about resilience, because I do know that I could have given up a long time ago and just said, I fought this fight. It's never going to happen for me. But I tell you all, keep fighting that good fight, and your frustrations will ultimately put you in a position where preparation will meet opportunity if you maintain that resilience.
Thank you so much. I have two more questions. So I hope folks can stay around for that. So the first one is in line even with what you said just now. Can you talk about structures or practices that existed and supported you in making the amazing and impressive ascendancy from summer associate in 1988 to SES? And the structures or practices that you think would be implemented, should be implemented to help others thrive in similar career paths. This person is particularly interested in how they can combine advocacy with bureaucracy to make institutional improvements.
That's just an awesome question, because my success is largely due to mentoring and networking. Let me start with mentoring first, because I can tell you very early on in my career, I attended Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, and they teach us that we are excellent, and then from Spelman, I went to Georgetown, went to another school that taught me I was excellent. So I walked in the doors of GAO thinking I was going to get everything that my hard work deserved. And I can tell you, for the first few years, it did. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like around year 6 or 7, I started hitting a roadblock and a glass ceiling. And I started thinking, now I know I'm the same person. What has changed? What had changed was the person who was my mentor, and I didn't even know he was my mentor. And he was actually more than a mentor. He was a sponsor. He was opening doors. Now, of course, I did the hard work to open those doors, but what I didn't realize was he was opening those doors for me. He was making sure he was going before me to make sure that he talked me up in the right circles. And of course, he was a senior executive service member. And so we need mentors and sponsors that are looking out for our best interest, someone who's already at the table that can speak up for us. And so I encourage you not to, we talk a lot about having informal mentors and informal sponsors. I say formalize it. You know, a lot of times when someone tells me someone is their mentor, I'll say, do they know they're your mentor? Do they know they're your sponsor? Do they know that you're expecting them to open doors for them and to advise you? And so you have to formalize the relationship. And I always say, take a look around. Who do you admire at your agency that you think will make a great mentor and sponsor for you? And of course, I just saw in the chat box, my good friend Deb Moss mentioned coaches. Yes, you want to have a mentor that's a coach, a sponsor that's a coach. You know, coaching is a great leadership style. I think that's my leadership style. At least that's my hope, that that's my leadership style. But we need to make sure that we've asked people to help us navigate the system. And so you need formalized mentors and sponsors. The next thing is networking. And this is where I think a lot of us fall short. We think we network because we go to events and we talk to people and we exchange business cards that we never do anything with. But true networking means that you are actively using your network and the network intends to be actively used. So when we were in college, all of us, we knew we were building up our resumes, or even in high school. You can even go back to high school. We were in the debate club. We were in the French club. We were in all these clubs because we knew the importance of networking, and we knew the importance of having those things on our resumes. But a lot of us won't join networking organizations now. I'm a lifetime member of Blacks in Government. I'm a lifetime member of Federally Employed Women. I'm a member of the African American Federal Executives Association. I'm a board member of the Ernest Everett Just Foundation. And I share those things, and I'm a member of so many other things. I receive benefits from all of those things. All of those things open doors for me. Everything I do is strategic. It was said earlier in my bio, in my introduction, that I'm a featured contributor for GovLoop. I am a featured contributor for GovLoop, not just because I like to talk and I like to write, but because I want more exposure for Blacks in Government. And through that exposure, I was invited to be a speaker for the Partnership for Public Service. So you get where I'm going with that? The more involved you are with organizations like Blacks in Government and other affinity groups, we're so proud to hear the outset that the State Department, I believe I heard, has 17 affinity groups. Those groups are so very important to make sure that the State Department has a partner. We're not just holding them accountable through adversarial type relationships. This is a partnership. You know, even as an attorney, I tell people all the time, we don't have to be adversarial just because we're advocates. We can be partners in this advocacy, and that's what I exhort us to do. So the long and short of that question, focus on mentoring, networking, and make sure you are actively pursuing both.
Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that. I think we need a part 2 of this, Honorable Jones, but I will try to run through this last question really quickly. So it's a 2-part question. Who do you surround yourself with, and what is your leadership style? You talked a little bit about that previously. And then, did faith have a place in your important decisions?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I saw while I was speaking, I watch the audience, whether I'm virtual or in person, I'm always watching the audience. And I saw when I was speaking earlier, some people were writing, won't he do it? Talking about God. And that's absolutely right. I absolutely know that when I'm talking about Henry Ray's opening doors for me, the Lord was opening those doors truly. And so, yes, my faith definitely plays a large part in it. And it's so funny, years ago I used to hate to hear people say they were a servant leader, because I felt like I just felt like most people didn't mean it. But now I say all the time, that's exactly what I am. I'm a leader, but indeed I'm here to serve others. I use this SES platform to try to reach back and help others to reach higher heights and to get all that their hard work deserves. So my leadership style is definitely one of coaching. Now, of course, we've all taken these, various leadership classes. And so we know there are lots of leadership styles, autocratic, pace setter. We've taken these classes, so we know all of the terms. But my goal is to coach others to excellence. We all have the skills that we need. We have the expertise. Often we just need some help packaging it. We just need some encouragement, some motivation because of the frustration. And so my goal is to be as a coach and ultimately to serve as a servant leader to others. So that was just a fabulous, fabulous question.
Thank you so much. I think that covers it. As I said, I definitely think we need a part 2. I will turn it back over to Madam President of our local big chapter, Sherry.
Actually, I am so pleased to bring before you our Vice President, Felicia Ruffin, to take it away for closing remarks. And we thank everyone, particularly the Honorable Shirley Jones. Thank you so much for being here. Take it away, Felicia.
Oh my goodness. All I can say is, wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. If I had 10,000 tongues, I couldn't thank you enough for all that you have displayed and conveyed to us today. I applaud you for your work ethics, your tenacity, your drive, your determination, your dedication. You are the face of resilience. I mean, you are in that lineup. I have written so much on this paper that I agree with Ruth that we do need a part 2 for this, and we will be sharing this video that we had with today. I mean, the last thing that I got out of all of this is take the time to breathe, because we do so much. And I appreciate you trying to help with being so transparent with your tenure, your history, your dedication of helping other women to be successful in all arenas that you partake in. I thank you so much, so very much. And I think the sentiments are oh so well overwhelming to all that are participating today. I would also like to thank you and the big national staff and all that came about to put this presentation together today. Director Greg Smith and Sarah Sorson in the Office of Civil Rights for her tech savvy to get us all on this platform today. John Jasic, that also was very assisting us in the chat, that I can see that was very overwhelming. I also would like to thank President Michelle Bernard-Toth, Vice President Ruth Murphy of the Executive Women at State. Thank you so much for your delivery and presentation with us today and moderating the questions. And all of the members of Blacks in Government, the Call T Rowan Chapter. I also like to thank Secretary Blinken and GTM. And we do have several affinity groups that are all a part of this effort of leading change, of how we are being so tenacious and, as you say, intentional about what we're doing right now, because the time is now. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I appreciate everything that you do and have done.
Thank you.
I'm gonna turn it back over to Ruth.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. President Jones, if you don't have anything final, or Sherry, and you can lead us out.
Thank you, everyone. Sign up and be a part of the Executive Women at State and Blacks in Government. You can find us in the GAL, our information under the Office of Civil Rights, and in Microsoft Teams. God bless you.
Yes.
Thank you. And we look forward to hearing and seeing you in the future. Take care.